was 12 years old, have 21 years of experience, came from a family of police officers, married a person who is also a police officer. My husband's a captain, also in the department. So between he and his family, we're all civil servants. Have a son who is a Marine. He got out, now he's going to college. So as you can see, I came from, really, my background is law enforcement and civil service. So before I go into my presentation, I just want to say thank you so very much that you guys are all here this morning, a week before Christmas. I know there's a lot of shopping to do, a lot of other places you can be at, but the fact that you guys are here today, it really warms my heart because it truly shows you guys are the leaders, the heroes of your community. So thank you very much for being here this morning. So I was invited to come and talk to you about what my division does. As the commanding officer of Real-Time Analysis and Critical Response Division, which stands for RACER, because try to say that very quickly 10 times, Real-Time Analysis and Critical Response. It's very long. So we call ourselves RACER. And RACER becomes basically Department Operations Center during a critical incident. Every city has an emergency operations center when there's a critical incident. Every department in the city has what we call DOC when there's a critical incident. So for LAPD, that's what we have here. And what the DOC does on a daily basis prior to a critical incident is we monitor everything that's out there. If you were to go into my DOC, you'll see a whole bunch of televisions. And you'll probably go, gosh, that's what we pay police officers to do, to sit there and watch TV. Pretty good job, right? Well, we monitor news not just locally, but also we look at the news from nationwide and also worldwide. Because what happens in France can affect Los Angeles. What happened in San Bernardino can affect Los Angeles very quickly. So we monitor the news and we get the information out there to our officers, our command staff, so that everyone have a situation awareness of what is going on very quickly. We also monitor social media. We have officers who are on social media 24/7 because my operations is 24/7. We don't go to sleep. We don't go to sleep when there's a holiday. We don't take a day off. We work 24/7, just like the rest of our partners out in the field. And all that we do is information gathering, information sharing. So for example, on Tuesday, last week, just to give you an example, as soon as we found out there's a possible threat against the school district, very quickly, at 5:30, I received a call from one of my supervisors, one of my commanders, and we had a conference call. And that's what DOC does. They schedule a conference call for all the bosses to get together, and the position we took is that we are going to support LAUSD, their decision to close down for the day. So it becomes very hectic for DOC, because we need to find out how many people do we have, how many officers do we have working right now at 5:30 in the morning, how many officers are coming in within the next 30 minutes, how many officers do we have throughout the day, and then how many will be coming in tonight, tomorrow, tomorrow night, and really for the rest of the week. So all that information has to be gathered very, very quickly. It's a matter of we cannot wait an hour or two to get that information. We need that information like it was yesterday so that we can plan. So in this case, we had the foresight, I guess, to always have that information readily available. We call it our planned deployment. And we do this on a weekly basis. So now, if I want that information right now, I can go inside my office and ask them to pull it up, and they can give me all the information through the rest of this week, or actually next week. So as soon as we get that information, what we do is then we call all the 21 areas within the department, and we ask, I know it shows you have 100, but truly, what do you really have? Because things happen. People call in sick, right? Or people are tied up because they're handling a radio call. So we needed that information. So once we ascertain that information, then we call all the specialized division that are now actually driving a black and white. because of this coordination, DOC is able to basically send our officers who are in the black and white to the schools, and then to find out what other schools need extra patrol, what other assets we have available, and we can coordinate it just from our office and send the appropriate number of officers to the various schools that we need the extra patrol and also walkthroughs. And all of this is done really inside DOC in coordination with LAUSC's, their DOC, and all the 4 bureaus that we have within the city. We, here at DOC, we do not deal with the tactical situations, but what we do is we coordinate resources here, giving that information to, the ones who are out in the field. So this way, when they say, I need 100 officers, our question would be, what do you need 100 officers for? And where do you want them? And what missions are you going to give them? And based on that information, based on that request, we're able to send the officers to them. Any questions so far? Oh my, okay.
When you redeploy, do you slide the officers over like the fire department slides their equipment over to adjacent stations and move them through? Or would you take somebody from Chatsworth and send them down to El Segundo?
We don't send them to, well, I guess.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, officers are in black and white. So if we were to take, let's say, 20 officers from the Valley to send it to South Bureau, they'll all come with their cars. So we don't have the fire engine, but they do have their own equipment, police equipment. So normally, officers will have whatever gear they have on, and then they will bring their own shotgun, their own beanbag, guns with them, and then their own police cars. In a tactical situations like this, we do not have enough cars to have all officers as a 2-man car. So sometimes in situations like this, 4 people would jump in one police car just to get them moving to that direction. Yes, ma'am.
What is the mode of communication? Are you dealing on a particular wavelength, a band? How are you communicating to all of these people to share this information?
I'm glad you asked that. As much as I love to say we have some wazoo high-tech equipment, we really don't. Our communications division, they can very quickly dispatch cars based on the availability, and they can get on their rover and go, I need this unit to travel from one end of the city to another. And then for us, ours is just pick up that phone and call the watch commander and says, I need 20 people to go from one end to another. We are in the process, though. Some divisions already has this capability. We are in the process of using, and I'm going to talk about that, of using Notify LA, which is Apple Bridge that bought over Nixle, for employee recall and also directing officers from one assignment to another. So we're still in the process of doing that. Some of our divisions already, like Metro, have that capability where their supervisor can call me and says, Jennifer, I want you to send 20 of my Metro officers and have them respond to your office. And I can send out a message via Nixle and text that information to them. So we do have some divisions who are already set up. My goal in 2016 is to try to get the entire department going that direction, utilizing technology so that we can get messages out there very quickly, and it's the same consistent message. But right now, it's really a phone call for those officers who are already working. One phone call to their watchman, and the watchman get on their radio and dispatch them. Or if they're at home and we have to do an employee recall, really it's phone calls. But 2016 hopefully is the year that I can make this automated and use Nixle to get the message to everyone all at the same time. Yes, sir.
Speaking of Notify LA, I don't believe it ever had the LAUSD shutdown on it. Definitely not early. Do you know why?
We did not, as far as Los Angeles Police Department did not do that. The messaging was actually, and I can't really answer for LAUSD, the messaging is coming from their PIO and their district. LAPD's role during that time and that day was really to support them. But all the messaging is coming from them. And I'm not sure why they did not use Notify LA. That's probably something that, what we call a hot wash or a debrief. something we probably need to look into to see what mass messaging modes we can use to try to get the word out to the public. But on that note, one of the things that I do and I have heard is that some of the information that the school district have for their families, they're not up to date. So one of the things that I would ask you to do is when you go back to your neighborhood, to talk to your neighbors and let them know that they need to update their information. Because what we were told is some of the phone calls that went out is the wrong number. The parents did not update the information like they should. So that's something that you guys can help us with. Yes, sir.
I used to be a teacher, and before I left, I had that system. Unfortunately, the district doesn't have a lot of control over the accuracy because it's the responsibility of the parents to notify the district when they change their phone number. Actually, they can do it themselves on the system. But that's a problem that needs to be addressed.
And it's a problem everywhere.
The LAPD's responsibility.
Yeah, but you'll be surprised, even officers, even myself, sometimes I change my number and I'm not as quick to, oh, I'll do it next week, and then everything else happens and then you forget. So it's a constant reminder to all of us that, for emergency, who do you contact? And phone numbers. So especially now, I think with our cell phones, we don't have to change our numbers when we change cell phone companies, which is much, much better. And that does help a little bit. I think he was first, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
In terms of calling in off-duty officers in the event of certain emergencies like earthquakes, have you done an analysis of where they're coming from and if they are able to actually make it, if they're outside the city? So for example, when the freeways collapsed in the North Valley, anyone who lived north of there in the Santa Clarita Rambler Valleys would not easily be able to get in. Have you done an analysis to know how much of your force is actually, and given the nature of the emergency?
I think like the majority of the public, the society, we kind of try to live closer to where we work. So for the law enforcement, most of the people who live in Orange County, most of our officers who live in Orange County is probably going to work in the south end just because of traffic. We have never done an analysis as to where exactly everyone work and live. But I can tell you this, majority that I know of that works in the valley, they live somewhere out in the valley. And majority of the ones who are working in the South Bureau, they all live out that South Bay in Orange County. So as far as a survey or analysis, we have never done that. During an emergency, when we have to do employee recall, a couple ways I told you, we can use the phone to call them, we'll probably use social media to call them. We will hopefully in 2016 use Notify LA to do the employee recall. And if there is, it is so critical that they are not able to come into LAPD. The directions is that we, as police officers, we respond to the local police station that we can get to, so that we can still provide help and support. Because most likely it's not only restricted to the city of Los Angeles. I think there was another hand. Okay,
Then
right
I'll
here.
take this back here.
Okay, yes.
I encourage you to do that research to find out. I think you'll be amazed at how many people do not live in the area where they actually work. That's been a big discussion at the West Valley Police Department, for example, in the past. And we were amazed at the number of people who live way outside of the area. And of course, people like captains get reassigned on a regular basis. Right. And it would be well worth your time to research that, I think.
Okay, thank you. Definitely consider that.
With the mic, there's a mic back there. Go ahead.
Actually, she had raised her hand just now, so. And then.
Sean.
Oh,
I'm trying to think how neighborhood councils do something now. And so I think I'm hearing you say that that the schools don't have all the right information from the parents.
That's what I heard. I can't
And so
speak
that
for
seems
them.
like a place that's on the ground
Right,
that we could really impact.
absolutely.
And so what do we need to do? Do we need the principals of each of the schools to put the word out to their parents, please update your information and then I will get it to the next step?
Absolutely. And
Or should they go straight to the LAUSD? What should we be telling the principals that they need to do?
I think the principal's probably doing it at the beginning of the school year to get the kids, because I'm a parent, I remember having a lot of homework with my kids every year they went back to school, right? The emergency contact information cards. So it's not just the principal, because I think the school district is doing their part, the principals are doing their part, asking parents to fill out the emergency card and information. I think what we need to do is really tell ourselves and our neighbors to just a reminder, please, it's okay to fill out the card, but it's not enough. If you change your information during the first month, second month, or whatever during the school year, it is critical you give that information to the school so they can update the system. Yes, ma'am.
What's your linkage to the county facilities? If you're LAPD, what about the county police force and the county fire department? Where's the link to that? How are they getting notified? Because you can't be, this is such a widespread out city. So you need the county services. So how are you working with them, if you are?
We are working, remember I talked about is when we monitor information and information sharing, it's not just locally. We work very closely with our fire department. We work very closely with our county. We're constantly sharing information. Now the county, the sheriff's department, they do not have a DOC that's 24/7. We are really the only law enforcement in this region that handles that. That's 24/7. So for us is when there's a critical incident, we contact their office, and then if they feel the need to, they will activate their DOC to a 24/7 for that duration, that operational period. But they are in the process of starting something similar to us. They've come over quite a few times to take a look at how we do things here and try to model it after us. So I'm hoping that within the next year or two, we will see that the Sheriff's Department would also have a DOC that's 24/7, and then that would assist us in sharing information in a much more efficient way.
When you say sheriff, you mean county sheriff?
County Sheriff,
Got it. Thank you.
yes, County Sheriff.
Thank you.
Hi there. Hi, I have a loud voice. Hi, okay, well, there it goes. Hi, I live up in Southern Tujunga, and when we're at the apex of like 5 different jurisdictions. We have U.S. Forest Service, we have all kinds of, sheriff, county, city. And so when we had the station fire, we had a problem because all these agencies had a problem communicating and working together and just allocating resources like you do for the city, which I think is wonderful. I think it's great to know that the city's doing that. But what about on the larger scale with all the different agencies? Is there something in charge for doing that or some way?
So one of the ways, because like you said, everybody has a different communication system. And we have learned this over the last, I would just say the last 21 years that I've been on the job. I personally have seen a shift in the way we do business. Before it used to be, if it's a law enforcement incident, law enforcement is right here. If fire department shows up, they're over there 2 blocks away from us. For the last 20 years, we have really worked with our counterpart, LAFD, to really set up a unified command. So in this case, there's so many different stakeholders, right? There's so many different agencies involved. And you're right, communications devices are, we can't always communicate effectively with each other, and we all have a different mission and a different area of responsibilities. And so in this case, we will set up a unified command post where we have a liaison from fire department, from law, from the various agencies that are involved, so that all the people who can make the decisions are in one room, and then the communication piece is a lot more effective and efficient, so that they all can carry out their responsibilities and duties and bring back the command, and normalcy to that area as quickly as possible. So in this case, we have been really practicing that type of methods to deal with the critical incidents, unlike before. Anything else? So I'm going to talk about a couple of things that my division also handles. First one I talked to you about is Notify LA. So help me out. I came to this division in April of this year. And at that time, I had about 36,000 subscribers to Notify LA, which is Nixle. So I gave myself a goal. I said, I want to have 40,000 subscribers. And I'm pleased to say we are almost at 41,000, I think. So not too bad, right? But you know what? I'm going to give myself another goal come 2016. I want to have 50,000. So I need your help to help me with this. If you guys can go back and let all your community members know, sign up for Notify LA. And I'll tell you this, Sheriff's Department use Notify LA, use Nixle very differently than the city of Los Angeles. They use it for community events to get the words out, you know, a dog found a bone, or we have a barbecue. City of Los Angeles, we use it for emergency only. Because what's gonna happen is, if I get text messages all day, every day from some entity that gives me information I really don't care about, you know what I'm going to do with my cell phone? I'm going to either ignore it or I'm going to turn it off. So, Mr. Featherstone is the General Manager of Emergency Management Department for the city. I'm in charge for LAPD for mass messaging. And we have agreed, we don't want our citizens, our community members to do that. I don't want them to turn us off. When we have a message, it's going to be important. For example, if I want you to stay at home and shelter in place, I want you to get that message. If I'm going to tell you don't go down that street, there's a perimeter, we have a suspect still outstanding, I don't want you to go down that street. I want you to get the message. So we're not going to bombard you with, we're having a barbecue today. Those kind of messages. We're going to give you emergency, critical messages that you really want to know about. So please spread the word. She's passing out the Notify LA pamphlet. If you have a cell phone, if you want to, all you have to do, go in your text message and press 888-777, and then it's going to give you a link to help you and guide you to their website, and then you can really say, okay, let's just say, I work in downtown Los Angeles, but I live in the valley. And you can say, I want any information or all information from downtown Los Angeles where I work, but also in the valley where I live. Because more often than not, if something happens at home, you're not going to get that phone call, right? But I would think that you would like to get that message so you know what's going on in the valley. So do me a favor, 888-777. Put in your text message, it will give you the link, then you can go back later and identify where you actually want your messages coming from. Yes, ma'am?
FEMA gave to the county and the city $11 million in the year 2011 or 2010. That money's been a political football between Eric Garcetti and Sheriff Jim McDonald. That's since 2011 to have a joint mobile communication system, of which we do not have for 9 million county residents, 3-point-something city residents. I think anybody in this room that's a government person ought to be looking into that, because that's egregious. We didn't learn from 9/11, and we've got $11 million going from department to department, and nothing has been done. Garcetti wants to build his own little thing or do an update of an existing system that is in the 18th century. So the public is going to have to get proactive on this. We need a linkage between all of the departments, county and city, and it's got to be mobile, unless you're going to do an exotic ham radio. And that's my next question. Does you have a ham antenna out here?
You know,
Yes or no?
There's a ham radio station here, which is linked to one over at City Hall East, and yes, they can get out on it.
Perfect, thank you.
thank you for that. You're much more of an expert on ham radio than I am. When you start talking about different acronyms on the ham radio, I was like, what?
And by the way, one thing, for Notify LA, if you just go to the Emergency Management Department website, just put into Google LA City EMD, it'll bring up the website, and you can sign up for Notify LA right on there, not a problem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, two things. We have ham radio both here at EOC. We have ham We have 2 ham radio stations here at the EOC. We have 2 upstairs at the fire department DOC. We have 2 antennas here on DOC building, and we have 2 on City Hall East. So hopefully, depending on the situation, we'll be able to get out to somewhere or some other. Also, some LAPD mobile command units have ham radios. I'd like to see ham radios in all of them, but, you know, we're in the process. And CHP has ham radio as well. My next question is, how often do you send messages out to notify LA? And if it's not very often, have you considered like a monthly message just to make sure we know we're getting the messages? And you know, like they used to run the fire department sirens every noon at Thursday just so everybody could hear it. Same thing on Nixie, because if it's been quiet for a while, sometimes we don't know, is it me? Did I change the setting? What happened?
No, that's a great suggestion. Remember I was talking about 2016 is going to be the year that I'm really going to work on that messaging. So that's one of the things we're working on. I have established an account for all 21 areas within the city for the LAPD. So the next phase of that is really teaching our employees how to use it effectively. So that's the next step. So the accounts are all established, dealing with a vendor. That took a little bit of time. Remember, I just got here in April. So that took a little bit of time. It's all set up. 2016, hopefully by January, we should be able to start training our employees to start sending messages. I know there's some divisions who are more active in NICSO than others already. So we're going to continue to push that to get messages out, relevant messages, not junk messages. Yes, sir.
Quick question. In regards to reverse 911, and notify LA, this might be more of an EMD question than Racer, but why doesn't the city of LA have do anything with reverse 911 specifically to landlines rather than nowadays we've been saying cell phone, text, which is a great resource, but landlines also in case we don't have that ability.
We actually do have, and we're using NICSO as the company, really the vehicle to do it. So we actually can send messages via the subscriber, which is the cell phone, and also landline. We can have voice message, and also text messaging, and also email. So actually we have that capability to do all 3. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say, I get text messages all the time from NICSO because I signed up for multiple zip codes. I work in one city, I live in another, I have family that lives in another. And I got a NICSO, I think it was today or yesterday, it was a test from the LAFD. So they are testing other agencies. And I think it's great. And so
I'm glad.
And I think it's actually life-saving, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, will you be hanging around at the end of this meeting?
I will not. I'm sorry. I have another engagement. I promised my 22-year-old that I was going to spend some time with the family before she divorced me. Like I said, I have a husband on a job too. So between the two of us, we really have to actually calendar time to spend with the family. Otherwise, I will be divorced and by myself, and then I'll be coming to you guys all the time.
More information than I asked.
But at least I'm honest, right?
I need a contact.
I will give you my contact information. But can I just talk about one thing real quick before I go? We also manage Crime Stoppers. Has anybody heard of Crime Stoppers? Good, I'm so glad. LAPD Racer Division actually handles Crime Stoppers. We manage Crime Stoppers for the entire region. Other cities, Long Beach, San Marino PD just signed up with us. And what it is that our community members, if they don't want their identity to be known, they can provide tips to us. I have less than pamphlets. If you can just give that information back to your community, your neighborhood, and let them know that, sometimes not everybody wants to be known that they're the ones giving us that information. So if you can help us out, we take phone calls, we take emails, we get about 800 to 900 tips a month. Just 3 months ago, on 3 separate homicide cases, different parts of the city, because of tipsters, we were actually able to solve that crime, capture the suspect, because of the tips that came in. 3 separate homicides that are not connected to each other. So I encourage you, if you can just help me spread the words, use Crime Stoppers so that we can help make the community safer, and I really would appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Okay. When we were at an El Nino forum last week, we were informed that your system does actually allow people to put special needs information into the system so that when you receive messages in an emergency, their files come up. Can you discuss, is that part of all of the messaging that you're dealing with right now so that you know where the certain people with special needs, elderly, etc. are located?
That is something that we're actually working with the vendor. I just had a meeting with them earlier this week, and that they're trying to help identify all that information for us. So that is going to be part of the system. And just so you know, El Nino, one of the things that we started with LAPD and LAFD really as partnership in this is, what we're trying to do is, it used to be after the rain gets here, it's flooded, then we go, oh, it's raining. Get out of the street, get out of the LA River flooded area. Now what we're trying to do, and it's something brand new that we're doing this year, and really kudos, a lot of kudos to the fire department and helping us to accomplish this is, we're always monitoring the weather. So what we're trying to do now is, hopefully 24 hours, 48 hours, I think tonight is supposed to rain, but when it becomes a big rain that is going to really actually have flooding potential, we're actually having our officers go out in the field, hand out brochures and flyers to people, let's say they are enjoying themselves in the LA River, and tell them, hey, I know right now it looks like bright and sunny, but it's going to rain this afternoon, please get out of the river. And then for those who don't have a place to go, the homeless encampments or whatnot, we're also giving them the flyers that the weather is cold. Here's a list of all the shelters for cold weather and also for rainy season that you can go and spend the night, get out of the rain, be dry. So we're actually taking efforts to do this before the rain gets here to notify the public. And we're going to be doing it in person, talking to each other. We're going to be, passing out flyers. We're going to do it social media. So we're trying to hit everything we can to get the message out to let people know rain is coming, find shelter.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think we're going to let Captain Thomas go.
Thank you. Otherwise, I can talk and talk for 2 hours. Thank you very much.
Veronica, you're up. Yeah, we're going to let her go.
I need to go.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
Are you? No, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just here for this.
Okay, wrong way. And I gotta plug your mic back in. It came loose.
Oh.
I can get it back in.
Okay. All right, how you doing, guys? You're here again. That means a lot. I think you guys are the super active ones, as the captain stated. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today. I'm really not going to talk to you about EMD or the EOC or anything like that. What I'm going to talk to you about is a real quick presentation, which a lot of you have seen already, but maybe could use a little refresher. Oh, I don't think the clicker's working. Okay, so I'm going to stand here. So you guys, I think I've met most of you. My name is Mona Curry, and I do work here. My office is right across the hallway. I'm an emergency manager, and I'm an emergency manager over the valley. One thing I do like to do, Lynn, is I like to poll people. So how many of you represent a neighborhood council from the valley? Raise your hand. Okay, the valley is super, super active. Just to be fair, who's from the west side? All right, west side folks, for you. Who's from the south side? All of you. And then the central. Central, this area, downtown.
And northeast.
And northeast?
Harbor.
Harbor.
Harbor just walked out.
Right here, Deborah?
Northeast or harbor? We haven't get called.
Okay,
Northeast.
are those your area, Veronica? North? Not the harbor. Not the harbor, that's the south area. All right, so, but you're lucky, because today you're gonna hear from Veronica, who's gonna speak after me, and she's actually the person that represents the Central Bureau, so she looks like she's got a lot of work to do, getting her folks out here, because my folks are all here. How lucky am I? All right. Okay, so again, I'm not going to talk to you about what the EOC does or what EMD does, but what I am going to talk to you about is something super important to the city as a whole, to our resilience as a city. Now, you all know how big we are. Our goal is to make sure, or as much as possible, try to become an extremely resilient city. Now, how can we do that? Again, the city has been talking about personal preparedness and family preparedness for years, right? So our next level of being a prepared city is preparing on the neighborhood level. How many of you have a neighborhood plan of any kind for your neighborhood? Yes, excellent. So you guys are the movers and shakers of our city. We need the rest of the folks in this room, and of course the other leaders who are not here today, to start those neighborhood plans. One program you can use is called the 5 Steps to Neighborhood Preparedness Program. This program was developed in 2012 by the City of Los Angeles. We hired a contractor, worked very closely with the contractor because we saw that we had a serious gap. The city did not have a way to tell you how to prepare as a neighborhood. So we looked at all the best practices around the nation, and we picked out the best pieces and then tailored them for our city. So here is our program. Why did we do this? Because this guy who was here last time, Roy Payan, a good example of someone who, after a disaster, found his neighbor had passed away. And if they had had a neighborhood plan, maybe he would, or somebody else would have checked on the neighbor right after the incident, and then would have been able to help the neighbor, and the neighbor may not have died. So this is a good reason of why you need to plan as a neighborhood. Why? You guys know why. That's why you're here. Disasters happen. The 5 steps, this is all online. Step 1, define your area. The books are right over there. If you need a book to follow along, if you don't have one, the book is right over there. So on page 4 in this guide, defining your area. Now this could be a small area of 2 blocks or one big apartment building. It depends. You don't want to make your plan too big because then it becomes unmanageable. However, there are ways to make it bigger, and we can go to something called an area command. After you found your area and you decided who's going to be a part of your plan, it could just be your neighbors across the street, it could just be a few houses, it could be a few houses in an apartment building. After you've decided what your neighborhood's going to, what your plan area is going to look like, then the leaders, who are you guys, all the CERT trained folks in here, raise your hand if you're CERT trained. Excellent. You guys are the ones who are the best qualified to actually do this plan. Just like Mr. Payan. Scouting your area. What are your vulnerabilities in your neighborhood? What are they? Do you live by an area that's constantly getting flooded? For El Nino coming up, do you guys know which areas in your area you might have a problem with after El Nino? Are you guys aware of it? Sure. All right, maybe if not, we can talk a little bit more with our Captain Wynn. He probably knows, at least maybe for the valley. But if you attended the workshops, they were spelled out to you there as well for the El Nino workshops. What are your assets in the neighborhood? Do you have places where you can gather if needed? Do you have a school in that footprint? Is there a church? Some other resource that you have that you can put down in your plan? Can I go backwards? That's a problem. Do you live near that? That's a big issue. Building your team. Not everybody in the team has to be CERT trained, but they do have to understand the plan. Because they're the ones who will help you, and you will be the ones to help them after the disaster, correct? Going and helping your neighbor, making sure they're okay. Then you plan your strategy. Basically everything you need is online, and it's in different languages. So not everyone in your neighborhood speaks English. We do have Spanish, some Chinese, and some Korean, and we're growing our languages every year. Okay, so if you go online, these are the things that you will find: the toolkit overview, the 5 steps guide, which was passed out. The important thing, the facilitator guide, which I brought a copy for you also. Is there any way, Lynn, we can get those facilitator guides passed around real quick? This is for the person who's going to be the leader. Who's going to lead your plan for your neighborhood? They're the facilitator. They read this, and it helps them, give them more understanding of what approach they should take. This is a great tool. But there are other tools also. Neighborhood survey, asking people if they have a special need.
Hello?
There's a plan template. You just fill in the blanks online. A video. There are 2 sample plans online now. And if you look here in the box, the blue box, folks across the nation are now adopting this program, and we're very pleased with that. I have been asked to speak many, many times, and I may be speaking on a national level next year as well. I mean, an international level. So here's what the website looks like. You'll see the toolkit drop down on the top. This is where you'll find all of those resources. Some drill. If you do actually make a plan and you want to exercise it, there's some information there. The steps. We try to update it as much as possible, but it's a great resource for you. Here's that facilitator's guide that you have. Again, this is for you, the leader, who will be doing the plan. And this also gives you some good tips on ongoing meetings. Once you have your plan in place, it doesn't end there, because you have to update your plan annually. People move in, people move out. You want to keep people engaged. This is one way. There's some ideas and some tips in here on how you can do that. The survey. You guys have all seen this. All right. Now, I've given you a lot of good information. I know it's condensed. Many of you have neighborhood plans. I applaud you for that. Are there folks in here who are just hearing about this maybe for the first time, or hearing about it again for a second time, that might want to go back and actually talk to their neighbors and start their plan? Who's going to start a neighborhood plan?
Everybody here.
Everybody here. So basically, who's going to help us as a city be resilient?
Neighborhood councils.
And you guys are the ones. You guys are the leaders, right? Does anyone have any questions on the 5 steps plan? Yes.
A quick one. In regards to the Preparedness you guys did a few years ago, is there any way we can see that come back to the neighborhood councils and neighborhood council system like you guys did with Preparedness Neighborhood Council a while back?
Do you mean have a drill with the neighborhood
Yeah, like
councils?
the large drill you guys did in Preparedness a few years ago.
Well, we are having another drill, and I can give you that information right now. We are having a drill on Saturday, April 30th. And we will be working with the United Neighbors Neighborhood Council. Is anyone here from the United Neighborhood?
UNNC.
The UNNC. Is anyone here from the UNNC? Okay. So we're going to be working with those folks. We're going to help them create their plan. And on Saturday, April 30th, we're going to do a big, full-scale neighborhood exercise. I know that we can invite people to come out and be observers, and there's some of you certain folks in here that we will also be inviting to be involved on some level, whether as an actor or a player or an observer or an evaluator. I'm not quite sure yet. We've got to work with that neighborhood council to figure that out, but we do have one on the calendar. Now, the only way we're able to do the exercises on that scale is because we get grant funded. So if that grant funding ever stops, then we won't be able to do that as a city, citywide. However, you guys can go ahead and do your own exercises and exercise your own plans in your own neighborhoods. It might not be on the scale of getting a helicopter, but you can certainly work with other city departments and do what you need to do to exercise the plan.
Mona,
Yes.
On one of these sessions, what I'd like to do is have you and I guess Captain Ignatsik and somebody from Tarzana who helped organize that, and have them talk on how you organize one of those exercises.
Yeah, we are trying to develop material to help communities better conduct and design their own exercises. We're heading in that direction. I know it's not an easy thing, but again, you have to have a plan to be able to test through an exercise. So if you don't even have a plan, then you can't have an exercise because you don't know what to exercise. Okay, yes, and then yes.
Here, yes. Do you know what area of the city that April 30th is going to be?
Yeah, that's, the UNNC is in an area called Historic Adams area. So our exercise will not be in the valley this year because I can't be greedy and hog up everything, right? So I have to share it, so it's in the area that's the south. Your question was?
Yes, I was wondering if you have ever thought of having a mobile van, moving van, with supplies that you bring to an area that is preparing itself. Because as I look at these lists, I realize that people will have to go out and shop big time to be able to supply just their own home, much less their neighborhood. And really, there are very few central areas where people can go and get their supplies. And I'm talking about all this plastic sheeting, etc. Food supplies are a whole other issue. There are different types of food supplies that one can get. Water supplies even more important. Has the city thought about doing that, or is everybody just supposed to find it at their local grocery?
Well, let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. You're proposing that the cities have a mobile truck, and after or before a disaster, we come out to you
These kinds of exercises.
to sell products?
Where you can buy them.
Okay,
They can display products, but they need a place where they can go and get them.
Mona,
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to talk to a couple of people. Maybe we can have some of the local vendors show up at one of our meetings and let people know where they can get these.
Right, well, generally you can get them at Target, Walmart, Home Depot, all the big stores. Now, the reason we're very careful with that kind of an approach is that we have to make sure we are not seen as advocating for one particular retailer over another.
I
So
understand
now,
that, but then people have zero.
well, everybody who in this room doesn't have some emergency supplies? The folks in this room are prepared.
Yeah, but when you go down to Adams, that's another story.
Okay. But like I say, maybe we'll be able to get some vendors who will come in and talk about it.
Right.
Yeah, and I know that in most of the events that you all do, you all invite vendors all the time, don't you? Yeah. All right, any other questions? Okay, one more question?
Chuck, a real good concentration of emergency preparedness vendors is the annual Valley Disaster Fair at Fire Station 87 in North Hills, Northridge. Like 50, 60 specialized vendors, that's all that it is. It's emergency preparedness, public safety related.
Where is it?
Fire Station 87 on Balboa, just south of Devonshire, usually in October.
October 1st.
October 1st is the next one. But that's a great, as well as guest speakers, very, very informative. Everything is free, so people have no excuse not to attend and learn.
Yeah, we can only go so far, right? In the end, ultimately, it's up to the individual, right?
Mona,
Right. Yes.
is this up on your website?
Well, yeah, you just go to 5steps.la, 5steps.la, and it's all there. Yes.
We have many people who are getting government aid. Many people are getting government aid. They are living day to day. How are they going to get their supplies? Is there any supplemental for people who cannot afford these?
The city does not have the resources to give out free supplies to everyone who needs them. Okay, we are a city of, you know this, almost 4 million people,
Oh, I don't
right?
disagree, I just asked the question.
Yeah, no. So the answer is no. Now, supplies in your home, for example, you don't have to go out to big stores and buy big supplies, a big supply kit. You know, I know they're very expensive. Most of us have this stuff in our homes, do we not? What do we need to do? We need to get some sort of a bag, go around. We have a checklist here. It's right there. You go around, let's see. Veronica has one. All right, let's see. So you take this checklist around. Do I have soap? Do I have toilet paper? Do I have bandages? And there's many items on this list that I have in my home, I put in the bag. I don't even have to go out and buy these. Why? Because they're already in my home. So many hands popped up. Where do I begin? Let's start front and go back.
Okay, in regards to,
Speak right into it.
all right,
99-cent store all the time. All the time.
There's not really.
Yeah, but the city has done its best to discourage neighborhood councils from having any emergency supplies, much less even getting a container to put the supplies in.
We're going to talk about that.
What's important.
I want to know, all the handouts, where can I get them in bulk?
Great idea.
Which area are you in? Do you know? Are you in?
Gateway.
So that's the south?
No, that'd be Harvard.
No, but they put up South
The
and Harvard
South
together.
Bureau.
We're South Bureau.
So Joanne Troncalli would love to help you, give you some resources. So do you have a pen? I'll just give you her email address.
How about a phone number?
Okay, Veronica's taking care of it. Next question? Bill?
Just wanted to point out that another source of what you consider free supplies would be your neighborhood councils. You can talk to them about it. For instance, with our neighborhood council, Granada Hills North, at each of the board meetings as well as the EP meetings, we provide a free EP item of the month, I call it. It's a triangle bandage, it's goggles, it's gloves one time, disposable ponchos, emergency ponchos, all that stuff. So does two great things. One is it gets, and it is okay by Dunn to do this because they're outreach items, so don't worry about a Dunn issue on it. But it does two great things. One is it helps stock your community with the supplies that they need. Plus, guess what? It gets people coming to your board meeting. Even if they leave after 10 minutes, that's okay. You've done the job. You've got some of those free supplies out there, and it's really easy to do. But if you have any questions or want to know, see me, contact me afterwards. And for those that have been talking about the Valley Disaster Preparedness Fair website, valleydisasterfair.com.
All right, any more questions on the 5 Steps to Neighborhood Preparedness Program? All right, thank you very much for your time.
Mona, thank you.
Yeah.
Now we're going to hear from Veronica.
Sure.
Yes. And poor Captain Wynn, who got here bright and early. But he's going to take a whole lot of questions, I guarantee you.
So much. I guess I can still say good morning. It's still 11 o'clock here. Good morning, everybody. It is just so awesome to see you all today. As it's been said before, there are a lot of places that you could be, but you've chosen to be here. But you know what everybody else out there doesn't know. Preparedness doesn't take a day off just because it's a holiday. So we always have to remain in a constant state of being prepared. My name is Veronica Hendricks, and I am the newly appointed emergency manager for the Central Bureau. And like Mona said, I got work to do to get folks in the room. The Central Bureau hasn't had an official representative for about 3 years. So I've been actively working with a lot of the residents in the Central Bureau just to let them know that I'm the new representative. Pardon me? The Central Bureau, well, I'll get to that. Yeah, City of Los Angeles. So just to give you a little bit of background about the Emergency Operation Department, which I work for, and this is just really quick because I know you guys you've got a schedule and we're a little bit behind, so I'll try and catch up. The city's Emergency Management Department is comprised of 4 separate departments. We have an operations division, which maintains the Emergency Operations Center, and it also assists the city in coordinating the city's response to disasters and emergencies. We have a communications division that does all the messaging that you see in the media and social media, hard lines like 800 numbers. So they communicate during times of disaster and also during times of what we call steady state when there's no disaster. We also have a special projects division that does all kinds of things at the request of the mayor and city council. And then we have the department that's most important to you. We have a community emergency management division, which I work for, and we are responsible for doing all the community outreach. We maintain close relationships and collaborations with neighborhood councils such as yourself, Neighborhood Watch, community organizations, the business community, and we are set up in the 4 strategic areas that consist of the same areas that LAFD and LAPD, their operation bureaus, are set up as. So we have a West Bureau, we have who Alan Piwan is the representative of, Mona Curry is the representative for the Valley Bureau, Joanne Troncalli, which Mona mentioned earlier, is a representative for the South Bureau, and then I am the representative for the Central Bureau. Our charge, and this is a charge that's given to us, by city ordinance and admin code, is to work with community organizations and to do outreach to help create a better prepared community, a better prepared Los Angeles. And as Mona mentioned, a better prepared community is better able to respond, and a more responsive community is more resilient and is able to recover. So there's just a direct nexus between being prepared, being able to recover, being prepared, being able to respond, being able to recover, and then being resilient. So that's our charge. The Community Emergency Management Division also has various programs. For example, the 5 Steps program that Mona talked about. We have a faith-based program that works with the faith communities in doing outreach and promoting resiliency, and then also promoting a sense of support and calm during disasters and emergencies. And these communities are very active, these faith-based organizations are very active in the various communities throughout all 4 bureaus. So touching some of those residents that may not have access to emergency supplies. Making sure that they're aware that in times of crises, this is kind of the hub, this is where you can come to. And getting back to basic preparedness, and we talked, one of the questions was, what about some of the residents in the more vulnerable areas? Because there are many residents in vulnerable areas that are not as connected, that are not as attuned to preparedness, that are not as savvy as you are. And so we work to help residents feel as if this is not a daunting process. When you start talking about buying an emergency kit, of course you're talking about money. And in some communities, they're just living day to day. And so to go out and to amass a lot of things, it's like, like one woman said, girlfriend, I'm just trying to put food on the table. I can't go out there and get all this stuff. And I said, ma'am, I understand that. But basic preparedness is just having a few simple things. Making sure that you have water. And you give them guidelines on how much water. Well, she says, I can't store all that water because we have to drink it. Okay, well then you know that you can use the water from your water heater. And we give people alternatives to that. And also letting them know that, is your church part of the faith-based coalition? Find out. Connect with them. Because in times of crises and emergencies, you can go there as well. Mona talked about this checklist, and we had a program, in fact it's an ongoing program called Your Kit. Your home is your kit. Your home is your kit. So we tell residents in areas that say, I can't afford to amass a big emergency supply kit. Go around your home and start pulling together basic things. put them together, you know, and by all means have just a basic AM, FM radio that's battery operated. So in the event that, you know, you need to listen to a newscast, you can do that. We tell them to make sure that they have, you know, batteries. They may not be able to have cash on hand like we talk about here, but you know, if you got a couple, just put something together, basically to say that you have a sense of being prepared. The Community Emergency Management Department also does a lot of presentations to community groups. We recently finished conducting, I believe it was 6 El Nino town hall meetings to get residents prepared for El Nino. The last one, I've done 2 in the Central Bureau. The first one was at LaSalle Park, which was a huge turnout thanks to the great folks in the Central Bureau. And the one we did on Tuesday was for the deaf community. And that was very fascinating to hear some of the kinds of concerns they have. Their major concern is getting the information because they can't hear, or getting their information because they can't see, or getting information because they have some kind of, you know, disability that makes it difficult. So we were able to talk about the efforts that we're undertaking to make sure they get the information. And we work really closely with the Greater Los Angeles Association on Deafness, because they're our community partner in making sure that we get information to them, and then they can use their methods and means to disseminate that information. We also have an array of collateral material, as you see here. We try and stay up to date on the latest information in terms of readiness and preparedness, and we can also make that information available to you. We talked about Notify LA a little bit. Notify LA is the city's official notification system, and when something, you know, it's interesting you talked about the LAUSD and why wasn't it used. I think Notify LA, since it is a relatively new product, you know, we're looking at ways to use it but not create message fatigue. How many of you get a lot of alerts and messages and subscribe to all kind of stuff, and there's a sea of, I'm the same way, and so sometimes people can get message fatigue. It's like, I'm getting too much of this stuff. So the city is working really hard to make sure that when you get an alert from Notify LA, it is always a significant event that's either connected with an evacuation or an order to shelter in place. And so we try and be very careful and strategic in how we use that. And when you get a message from Notify LA, you'll be guaranteed of 3 things consistently without fail. That message will tell you what has happened, what the city is doing, and what you can do to stay safe. And I'm going to say that one more time. It will tell you what has happened, what the city is doing to mitigate what has happened, and what you can do to stay safe. So if you subscribe to Notify LA, you will get that information. How many of you are in the CERT program, or how many of, it is critical because CERT members are leaders in our community. They help residents respond and recover from disasters. And as leaders in your community, it's really critical that you have that connection, that you be able to get this information, because you might have residents in your area who don't know, and they'll be looking to you. It's really easy to sign up for. Notify LA automatically captures landlines. So if you have a landline, you're already in the system. The problem is, which I learned from AT&T when they came and redid my U-verse, is they changed my landline to a voice over IP line. So it really isn't a landline. So here I am thinking that my landline is automatically included, in addition to my cell phone, in addition to registering my email address, in addition to registering my, my mother's address or her zip code and my work zip code. My home phone was not automatically included. So I have to go back in. I went back in and I registered my home phone. So if you have a voice over IP system with your that you thought was a landline, you have to go ahead and sign up for that as well. And one other thing, one of the best ways that you can be the best responders in your community, as Mona talked about, is to have a community neighborhood plan. It is really important. Because when something happens, you know what to do. You know who the leaders are. You know how to connect with people. You know how to pull your resources together. And that's really, really critical. But we want to drill down a little further. The city for years has been talking about personal preparedness. How many have a family emergency plan? Something that is hard copy or in email form, something you can touch and feel and say, this is our family plan, this is what we do as a family. How many of you have that? Quite a few. Well, the city has made that planning process a lot easier. On the back of your Notify LA brochure, you turn it over, there's a little blurb called Prepare LA Now. And Prepare LA Now is the city's new official family and also business planning tool. So you can go in and put in some basic information and it will create this wonderful plan that you can share with your families. You can store it to a cloud, you can save it on a flash drive, you can email it, you can download it, you can print it, and you can put as much information as you're comfortable with. It's a secure site. If you are a person or have a family member that has disabilities or any kind of access and functional needs, you can put what that disability is. If they use assisted equipment to move, mobility equipment, you can put your medications on there, who your doctors are. It is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And you can update it as much as you want. One of the firefighters who helped in the planning of this tool was really excited about it because he said that, if residents would create this plan and put as much information as they can and leave it somewhere visible, if we had to respond to a call for help and we saw that plan, we'd know everything we'd have to know about that patient. What medicines they were taking, I'll get to you in a minute, what medicines they were taking, what kind of assistance they might need. Because a lot of times in an emergency, people are excited and the basic things that they don't know, so that's really helpful for them. And then lastly, with Prepare LA Now, emergency responders especially from fire, are really excited about this because if they have to do an evacuation, they can go into Prepare LA Now and draw a geographic circle or they can catch the geographic area that they're looking for. And they can find out what residents in that evacuation area might need assistance evacuating, whether they don't have a car, whether they have some kind of mobility issue. So they can better plan their resources before they roll out to evacuate people. So it's a really, really helpful system. So basically, that's kind of a brief overview of what the Community Emergency Management Department does. As I mentioned, we consist of the 4 bureaus once again. We have a West Bureau, a Valley Bureau, an East Bureau, and a Central Bureau. A question?
Yes, could you give us a little bit of the boundaries so we know where the dividing lines are?
Ooh, see, I don't know the boundaries of all my colleagues. So what I can do is I can get back to you on that. My boundaries are, let me try to remember, I am the 134 freeway, on the other side of the 134 freeway. I wish I would have written this down. And part of mine covers just right above South LA. And then, let's see, on the west side, I'm right before Wilshire and Normandy, I believe. So the Central Bureau is pretty, it's smaller compared to the Valley, but if you want to know the boundaries, I can get back to you on the boundaries of all of my colleagues because I don't know all their boundaries.
Does it match LAPD?
It exactly matches LAPD. So if you, and I know you guys have got to push the program, I'll just take one more question so we can get back on schedule. Yes, sir.
More statement than a question. I'm a technologist and, thank you. And I keep a landline specifically because I know that the landline, the wired telephones, our copper telephone system is powered by the phone company. It's not powered by electricity. When the grid goes down, you're going to need a telephone, and that's the one that's going to work. What I'd like to know from others who might be more educated than I, who might be here today, is whether and when a voice over IP system will be better than that.
I don't know when it will be better, but of course, my friends at AT&T, you've got about...
We've got a gentleman who can answer, and then I guess...
Yeah, you've got about 4 more years of a wire lines. And then they're going to go there to expenses. So everything is not true VoIP, but different.
I kept the copper pair for years for precisely that reason until I did some research on UVerse. By talking, not looking at the literature, but talking to technicians. I have UVerse. The UVerse is fiberglass to the SLIC, which is the local switch, which is powered by its own UPS. And from the SLIC to the house, it is copper pair. When they installed my UVerse, they installed the UPS for the router. So I at least have some capability, probably as much as we have with the copper pair. So it's not quite as disastrous as you would think. It's also, according to the technician, because the fiber is less susceptible to interruption from a catastrophe than the copper pairs are, possibly more reliable. I don't know about that. Although I did have a lot of problems with the copper pair corrosion. They had to replace the caps and all kinds of stuff. And I've had no problems with the UVerse. So I'm guardedly optimistic with what IP.
Thank you so much. Okay, I know we got it.
I'll just tell you, based on a particular business, I can tell you that UVerse is not true VoIP, Time Warner is not true VoIP, UMA is true VoIP, and a couple others. And if you're going to have any UVerse or whatever the other guys call it, make sure that you have something that keeps your modem and your router running. If you don't have that, you're going to lose that. And last but not least, a dial telephone. How many people here have a dial telephone that's not powered by the electricity? In other words, it's not a wireless phone. Okay, good. Because if you got a wireless phone in the house, that goes away too.
All right, we have just one more question, then we'll have to wrap. Did you have a question or comment, sir?
Yeah, well, first of all, a clarification. This plan, is this something where the information is always be stored in this building?
Yes.
And in all the
Well,
others?
not, we have a secured site where we store the information from plant.
Okay, the issue is the plan thing would save an awful lot of shoe leather in terms of developing the information for, the Fort Locks where I live. So if this is a parallel process, it's a very good idea that it needs to be integrated with the other process. That was my question.
All right, well, thank you.
Comment is, I really wish that these cute acronyms would be avoided because plan is used in so many other ways. And anybody sees plan, they're just going to ignore it.
That's a good comment, thank you. All right, I thank you for your attention, and I'm going to turn it over to Lynn. I know you've got to stay on schedule, so I apologize for taking too long, but thank you for your time and attention. And thank you for coming to the EOC today. I appreciate you.
Okay, he's been waiting patiently. Captain Wynn. And I'm going to make you use this because that other mic was disconnected.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I know you guys probably heard a lot today, so I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. I appreciate you being here. The fire department appreciates you being here. Obviously, you guys are the leaders in disaster preparedness, and you do it in your own neighborhoods. And for us at the fire department, that's exactly what we need, is coordination within the neighborhood councils. It helps us after a disaster to know that neighborhoods can be self-sufficient for a period of time. And the fact that you're here today learning about that really makes me happy. And trust me, the fire department appreciates it. I'm going to talk a little today about CERT. I'll start with myself. I've been in the position of CERT commander now for about 2 months, so I'm still fairly new. I'm learning about the system, and I'm learning about the program in general. And it's a very vast program. There's a lot of different aspects to the program, and it all starts with you folks in here. I was really happy to see all the hands go up when they asked about who was CERT trained. Thank you very much for taking your time to do that and for our participation in the program. I'm going to go ahead and just go through this slideshow fairly quickly because since you all pretty much are already CERT trained. I don't want to waste too much of your time. Another note about myself that I forgot to mention is that I'm a lifetime resident of Los Angeles. I grew up on the west side in Mar Vista. I currently live in the middle part of the city, Mid-Wilshire District, and I enjoy working for the city as a captain for the LAFD. So community preparedness is personal to me because it has to do with where I live, where I grew up, and my friends and neighbors that are at home when I'm at work. It has everything to do with making sure that they're ready if something should happen and I'm not there. Okay, so let's just get through this PowerPoint fairly quickly. Just a quick little history of the CERT program. It was created here in the city of Los Angeles in 1985 by LAFD Assistant Fire Chief Frank Gordon. He was very active in creating the program. He made a couple trips over to Japan after a large earthquake there. He also traveled to various parts of the world to learn about what happened to cities, major cities after disaster. And what he found was that communities bonded together. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of coordination when they did bond together. They did the best they could and it worked fairly well. So he decided that here in Los Angeles, he wanted to take on, spearhead the effort to coordinate community response after a major emergency or disaster. The volunteer coordination was needed in Los Angeles where the potential for disaster was and currently is very high, as you know. We live in the middle of what used to be a desert, and there's a fault line that runs basically right through the city here, and we're due for a major earthquake anytime. On top of that, obviously, terrorism, floods, riots, you name it. We've seen it all here, and so the coordination part of volunteerism is where the CERT program is centered. So the development, the key points that were observed. There was a potential for a disaster and exists everywhere. Disasters overwhelm government response, that we know. In a city of 4 million people, I can tell you now that the fire department is not going to be able to respond to every one of those calls for help after a disaster. We're going to do the best we can, and we're going to organize in a way where we affect operations in areas that are most needed to save the most people. But in the end, your preparedness as neighborhoods is going to be key in trying to save lives. The development, also, one of the key points is that people want to help. You guys are here on a Saturday when you could be out shopping, when you could be watching football, when you could be doing a million other things because you want to help. And that's what we find in communities all over the world, is that people want to help. And so, that being said, that's why you're here, and that's why the CERT program was developed, because we needed a coordinated way to have people that wanted to help do so. And then obviously the response and recovery of a community, the resiliency we've been hearing all day about, that all is improved with the assistance of communities and neighborhood councils. So a quick overview of the program, since maybe you already know about it. Includes 17 and a half hours of initial instruction. It's taught throughout the city of LA by LAFD firefighters. The topics include disaster awareness, fire suppression techniques, medical operations, recognizing, treating, and triage, multi-casualty incident management, light search and rescue, and team organization and disaster psychology, and then terrorism and homeland defense. The CERT organization is modeled after the fire department. Everybody's been talking today about the 4-bureau concept for the fire department. That's actually a newer concept. It's only been around for about a year for us. We wanted to be more in line with the rest of the city, especially the police department. So we reorganized our whole organizational chart to be more reflective of that. The bureaus are the same as we've been talking about with the police department and the EMD. 4 geographical bureaus, including the Valley, the West, the Central, and the South. So the CERT program is modeled after our fire department. So we have 4 geographical bureau CERT areas, and then each of the bureaus is broken down between 14 battalions. There's approximately 3 battalions in each bureau. One has 5, but there's 14 total. So after the initial CERT training, the American Red Cross currently offers additional training to become level 2 certified with 12 additional hours to include disaster services, first aid, CPR, and AED training. Also shelter operations. Level 3 is additional 50 hours, and it's centered around emergency medical response. So those are the 3 levels of CERT training that are available, and we encourage all of our members that have the basic training to increase their knowledge by attending additional training. There's also a fire department call-out team for CERT members that are interested in participating. The call-out team receives additional training, including DVOC training or driver's education training for department vehicles. And then also they assisted a lot of the fire department with the everyday and major emergencies and routine operations both. So the call-out team members are an extremely important asset, and we really appreciate the time that they spend to receive the training and also to participate during major emergencies and fire department routine operations. There's a hydration unit. Hydration unit is a pair of CERT volunteers who come out and assist the fire department after major emergencies. They provide hydration to the firefighters, reduces injuries out in the field, and also allows people to get better hydrated so they can go back in and continue firefighting, whether it's a large-scale hazardous materials incident. We just had down south there a recycling plant that was on fire for about 2 days. So the hydration unit was key in getting down there and helping the fire department. Wires down standby, as you know, when the wind blows or it gets rainy, a lot of times wires fall. The call-out team will go out and stand by on the wires so that the fire engine can be released and go and respond to other emergencies that are normally happening during that time. It frees up the resource so that they can respond to other emergencies that are in progress. Sandbag filling for citizens is something that the CERT team call-out helps with. Basically, with the El Nino coming, we're anticipating a great need for sandbag filling for citizens, and this is another function of the CERT team. And finally, the Community Fire Patrol is a concept that is based around citizens helping the fire department to identify issues that happen on high hazard days. Generally speaking, when we have red flag days, the Community Fire Patrol will go out, patrol an area. It's staffed with an ACS member who is an expert in communications and a CERT member, and they would patrol areas and be able to communicate directly with the fire department to allow us to respond to things quickly so that it doesn't expand into a major emergency brush fire. If we can get there fast, we're going to get it out before it gets bigger. And then large-scale community events. There's, as you know, a number of these throughout the year. The Hollywood Christmas Parade was one of the recent ones. At that, CERT teams provided assistance at first aid stations throughout the parade route to assist the fire department in serving their neighbors. These are some recent CERT events that have gone on. We had an MPOD drill out in Granada Hills. I know there's a lot of Valley folks here. We had CERT members coordinate and run that drill in its entirety. So very highly trained people are out there in the CERT program. The MPOD drill was a great interaction with LA County on establishing medical supply cache and being able to distribute medication to a community as a simulation to some sort of attack or terrorism event. Hollywood Christmas Parade, we've had the South Bureau refresher drill. As CERT members, you're all welcome to come out when we have a refresher drill. We're doing 4 of these a year, one in each of the 4 geographical bureaus. Those South Bureau refresher drill was the last one we did. We're doing the West coming up in early March, and that's going to be held in the West Bureau. So this is a chance for you to re-hone your skills. Just like anything with CERT, if you don't use it, then you probably are going to lose it. So the refresher drills are a great opportunity to come out and kind of go over your training again. We're also instituting battalion level coordinator meetings for every battalion. So if you're in a particular battalion, find out who the coordinator is. If you're not the coordinator yourself, because I see a few of them here, and find out when those meetings are going to be held, and get out to those so that we can provide some training at those meetings as well. We've been doing the El Nino Town Hall series. There's been a series of 6 to 7 meetings that have gone on over the last couple months. So there's been a big CERT presence there. As leaders in the community like you are, I know you like to be informed with everything that's going on, and the town hall meetings have been a success in getting people ready for the winter. The call-outs, like I spoke about, are going on constantly. It's a 24-hour-a-day program, so whenever there's something that happens in the city, those are happening. And we basically we keep a tally of how many people we train a year. On average, we train about 1,800 people every year. We're up to about 250,000 trained since the inception of the program. And this program is one that it was started here in LA City, and the federal government took a look at it and they adopted it based on our model. Now it's a federal FEMA-sponsored program. They have ultimate oversight on the program, as well as the California Citizen Corps. They also oversee the program. So what used to be just an LA City program has now expanded to a national level and a global level. It's actually in about 5 to 10 countries worldwide, where it's citizens helping citizens. And so we're very proud that it started here, and we intend to continue to grow. Okay, so how can the neighborhood councils benefit by CERT training? As you all know, since most of you have taken it, having people trained and knowing what to do after something happens is crucial. It gives us basically a coordinated preparation within the neighborhood in which you live. So just like the neighborhood plan, if you've got additional training as a CERT member, you're obviously going to be a valuable asset on that planning committee. So having the training gives you some insight about how to set up the ICS system, and you'll be able to better assist that coordination group with setting up the plan for your neighborhood. And self-reliance after a major disaster. Like I said, the city's going to be overwhelmed in general, and so any kind of self-reliance effort that you can make before the disaster is going to assist you after the disaster as a community, starting within your home and then branching out to your neighbors next door, to your block, to your neighborhood. There's more efficient recovery after lives are disrupted. With the CERT program, obviously, you're going to have some training on how to get people's lives back together. You'll be able to assist them with some of the things that they're not able to do themselves or may not have the knowledge. So you can be a teacher and a helper, which will all lead to more efficient recovery. And then obviously the interaction on a regular basis with friends and neighbors. CERT's a good excuse to get together with people in your neighborhood, to learn something together, so that when disaster does strike, you're out there, you're together, you already know that you've been trained together, you know what everybody's capable of, you come to learn that there's assets within your community where you didn't even know that that person, was experienced in that. Maybe there's a trade or some sort of technology that they're aware of. So when you get together for CERT training, you learn those things, and you can be more aware and more prepared. And then obviously, CERT gives you a peace of mind. Anybody that's taken the training probably felt better after they took it than before they did, because at least they felt like they could do something after a major emergency. So it gives you a peace of mind knowing that you're well trained.
Change the spelling of peace.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I just threw it together this morning, I apologize. Okay, so how do you find a class in your neighborhood? The website's here. There's some brochures over here. It's got the website on the brochure. If you go to www.cert-la.com, you go into the section that says go to find a CERT class. It's there. It'll have a list of classes that are coming up in your area. You can attend one of those. If not, you can call our office and request a class. If you can get 20 people together, we'll come out to your neighborhood, your council, and we'll come out and teach you CERT. There's also on the website a link that says need a CERT booth, which we're in the process of changing because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you go to need a CERT booth, there's a request form there. Fill out the request form, submit it, and it'll come directly to us, and we'll contact you and to set up a class. Yes?
I've been so long since I took the class, I probably need a refresher. Is there a cost involved? Because I remember there being a cost involved.
No, absolutely not. Any CERT training provided by the City of Los Angeles or CERT volunteers, there is zero cost involved. The only cost that I can think of related at all to CERT might be to buy a patch or something like that, but not for the training itself.
The green hat was free I got?
I'm sorry?
The green hat I got was free?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's the
Okay.
sort of thing the neighborhood councils do.
What's that, sir?
Neighborhood councils could appropriate money for little things like patches and so on.
Yeah.
We have budgets, why not?
That's been common practice in the past. Let me just finish here and we'll get on with it. And then here's the phone number for the CERT office if you'd like to schedule a class, or if you have any questions about refreshers that are coming up or CERT battalion meetings, anything like that, give us a call. We're happy to help. I want you to know, as the new CERT commander, one of my primary responsibilities is to reconnect with people who are in the program that feel like they have kind of forgotten it, left out of it, whatever. My plan is to have a train and retain program and not a catch and release program. And I'm not sure where it was in the past. I have heard a lot of feedback from where it was, but the catch and release doesn't work as far as I'm concerned. So I can tell you that if you haven't heard from CERT in a while, that I apologize, first of all. But second of all, that my intent is to reach as many of you as I can if you took the training with the City of LA. Yes.
Another quick question, based on my long time have taken it a long time ago, am I on record somewhere as having taken it as far as you're concerned? Or
Yes, you are on a record. Unfortunately, because there's so many people trying to sift through that many years of training people, and with all the modern technology, it's fantastic as it is. As you know, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming to figure out, well, what's the best way to contact people? If you've got 50 ways, then which one is the standard way or the way that is best? And everybody's got an opinion about that, trust me. That being said, we're trying to come up with a program where we can have one way of talking to people, and that's the way that we're going to do it from now on. Because as great as social media and everything else is, it's got its limitations because it's so vast, and you end up miscommunicating because of so many different ways.
We have a question back here.
Hello? Yeah. I just want to say that
What we did as a
the
neighborhood
council
purchased 50 CERT bags. Can you hear me?
50 CERT bags to encourage people to take the course, and it certainly did, because the bags alone are $50, and of course you get the helmet and a few things, but pretty pricey for some people. So in any case, it did help a lot. We haven't used all of the bags, but more people become aware of it. You don't have to be on the board, you can just be a neighbor or whomever. And so I encourage you all to do that as well. We bought 50 at one whack, and we probably got 15, 20 left. but you have to bring your certificate, and we will give you the badge.
Are there any plans to reestablish weekend CERT trainings? We hope, we pray.
Wait, are you trying to say that people have lives during the week?
Just a few of them.
Yes, yes, I realize that weekend trainings are very much desired. Without getting too far into it, I can tell you that it's tough on the program because obviously firefighters, work a schedule that's during the week. And that's been one of the major things I've been trying to push is more funding for overtime to have to come on the weekend to do it. It's something that I've just, like I said, just gotten into as far as the position goes. But that's one of the ones where if we're going to reach the community, and that's a push, then we need to be able to accommodate on the weekend. So I am working on it, and as soon as we have funding, we will be doing it.
Hi.
Hi.
I live in the city of LA, but the training programs, the hours and locations were not convenient for me the way I work. So I went through the CERT training with the county of LA because they allowed me to come on a Friday night, pay for so many hours, and then to swing back on a Sunday for like, $5. So that worked really well with my schedule. You were talking about being able to do outreach to people who are part of the CERT program that went through it with the city of LA. What about those of us that, because of scheduling, went through with the county? We have our, our certificate. We went through, we got our bags and the whole thing. We just had to go another route because of scheduling.
I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, the database we have is based on people that took our classes. I'll be happy to take your information and include you with any information we have about training. We always welcome CERT members from anywhere to attend our trainings. And we have a mutual agreement with the local CERT programs to attend theirs. So we like to help each other, if you will. There's actually a lot of that coordination is happening as we speak. We're falling more in line with the state as far as the Citizen Corps goes and making sure we're in line with them, and that's going to open doors for coordination between local programs. So please give me your information and I'll make sure you get info on any of our training.
I'll make a comment in response to your statement about the need for weekend training. I had the same problem in my neighborhood. I couldn't get everybody to work very late. So I developed a training program that takes the salient parts of CERT training, the Red Cross Advanced First Aid, the Red Cross Emergency Medical Responder, and I now provide training to neighborhoods as a private consultant for fee. My program has been reviewed by fire captains and Red Cross instructors, and I use Red Cross instructors, but it's not certified by the fire department. However, you're covered under the same liability protection as you would get if you took CERT training. So I've got a handout over there that's called Civilian Emergency Response Team Training Programs. That gives you a list of what's available today.
Yeah, I just had a question about other specialized training. I happen to work for a very large global disaster and relief humanitarian aid organization. So I have specialty training and certification in critical incident stress management. And I don't think that that's necessarily part of CERT. I'm not CERT trained right now. I'm also not part of the mayor's crisis response team. But since I have this training, it could potentially be helpful during an emergency. Should I be telling anybody other than those in this room that I'm trained in that?
If you're are you asking, would the city hire you to be part of a crisis response team, or are you saying you want to be helpful as far as like a response goes?
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy to, help in a response kind of situation, but I'm not on anyone's list right now, so I'm not on the
You
mayor's
may want to
team.
talk to the EMD.
Okay.
They would be more in line with that type of
Okay.
service.
The relation as far as neighborhood council and CERT, and if we want to do an event in our, like I'm from Chatsworth, and the funding is not there, the neighborhood council really doesn't want to give us so much money, and we want to invite our neighbors and to offer things. Can we ask for sponsorship as the point, as a cost to offset if we want to buy things? If there is any problem?
Be outreach.
But I say, like the neighborhood council, they don't want to really, even it's outreach and things like that, they don't want to really sponsor any money. I know because there is a CERT and there's neighborhood council. It's because sometimes we need money and sponsor, we like to sponsor things to be able to accomplish something very strong. And this is.
I'm not sure if I understand the question. So you're asking about sponsorship for training, or?
It can be training, or because we want to gather some people in the valley, example, and we'll offer donuts, and there is a cost effective, and we don't have the money to support that.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? Like if I want to do a block party and to bring people in, and there is a cost effective, then can we have some sponsorship to support that?
That's going on.
Private sponsorship?
Yeah, project.
Yeah.
That's why I said project, because we don't want to.
Yeah, that sounds like neighborhood council.
As a private citizen, you want to get together with others and have sponsorship, there's no problem.
Oh,
That's
I
your-
don't want it because to rotate.
Yeah, no, that's your activity, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sir?
When you were talking about it, and we've all been after this too, is a weekend training or something that's more than stretched out over a length of time. One thought that we have tried to push, and by we I mean several in the community, is in city, the CERT program is taught by LAFD. It's not always taught by a government agency in other parts of the country. County, for instance, authorizes civilians to teach CERT. And I suspect there are political and other issues involved in the city of LA for not allowing that, but something to consider is taking trained CERT personnel, the CERT teams that we have now, the outreach response teams, and partnering with LAFD personnel to assist with the classes, to provide additional manpower, or person power, perhaps we should say, so that you can, just like everything else, it becomes an extension of the program, to where it's not always required to be a paid firefighter to teach it for the 17 and a half hours. Perhaps one to start and leave, and the volunteers take over, they take a particular portion of the course, something like this that would allow it to be expanded greatly, to utilize the resources you already have. Many of us in this room could, with that exception, teach the CERT course. It is a FEMA course. You can get it online. And I have seen, unfortunately, some CERT instructors, not in LA, that show the flip charts from FEMA and say, this is how you do it. And I know there's issues with, okay, we don't get to talk about how you saw the headless children after the bus crash and that sort of thing, but still, you get the program, you get the effort, you get it all covered. Something to think about going forward as a way to expand the program, get more people involved, and get us all working on that kind of an effort. More resiliency.
You have just formed your first committee.
In response to your comment, I agree with you. I agree with you. The issue that, and again, I'm fairly new to this, but the only issue that I've found in regard to that, because that's been a point that's been brought up quite a few times. The only issue that I found in response to doing that, or in line with doing that, is that the curriculum needs to be adhered to in order for us to stay in line with the federal and the state government. When it's sponsored by the fire department, we have to have some sort of quality control, and we have to oversee that curriculum. Now, that's the only thing that I could think where that would not be a great idea.
Should I talk about the idea where the senior lead officers were going to be trained to teach CERT in 2.5 hours and then go on and teach CERT? I have not seen a single lead officer yet teach a cert class, yet that was in existence 2 years ago. Quality control is a big issue, but being FEMA, as you said, it's controlled by FEMA and Citizen Court and then the fire department. So, things to look into, all I'm suggesting.
Thank you. I'll look into that.
Yeah, it's not easy, I know.
I'm just wondering, is there a reason why the cert classes aren't online? Why can't you have an online cert class?
FEMA 305.
Yeah,
You can get your ACLS, you can get your
FEMA doesn't.
BCLS online. I can't see why this couldn't go online. It would be a lot easier, and I think it would attract your younger generation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know why the FEMA doesn't provide an online version that is considered, be able to be certified online. I know that for our program, some of the skills and things that are learned are manipulative. You have to actually practice them and perform them. So that's stuff that obviously you have to.
But that's like the ACLS, is that you do it online and then you go in it. You do it online and then you have one mandatory classroom where you have to do your.
Oh, I see.
And I could think.
That's it. Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I haven't heard that from any other person, so let me look into that. I don't know what the answer to that is, if there is an answer, other than I know that there's certain things you have to manipulative test. So.
Right, but I'm sure that you could, work that would be more convenient.
Yeah, I agree. That would make it a lot more easy on the scheduling, that's for sure. Yeah. Yes.
Approximately how many active certs people are there in the city of LA right now? Do you guys have it? My second question.
There's no solid answer on how many.
That you're working on.
Well, yes, we're trying to outreach to people that have been kind of, trained but released.
Okay. Okay, so the second part of it, seems to me that one of the functions of this group and these meetings is that we will get a mapping of all cert-trained people in our own neighborhoods, and that way we'll be able to have local organization.
This is a fight we've been having
Sorry.
for years and years and years.
I'm not sure I understand the issue.
We're trying to get the names of people who are cert trained in our neighborhood council areas.
Oh.
And because of privacy issues, you can't do that.
Unfortunately, the answer to that is the same today, and it'll be the same tomorrow, because there's nothing I can do about those types of things when it comes to privacy.
But even if there were such a way that we could say, we'd like to get this information out to the cert-trained people in our area and give it to you, we don't have to have people's names or email addresses?
You're getting ahead of us.
That's a real problem.
There will be.
Okay, there you have it. There will be.
There will be.
There you have it. There will be.
There will. That's what this is for.
Okay,
That's what
great.
this is for.
So,
That's a real problem.
yeah. So we're in process
Okay.
on that. Anything else?
How many kids do you still have left? Because last time I talked to Susan Jensen, she said that there was still a few left in the unit, but considering you guys first not the grant company, do you still have those few left?
I'm sorry, what is it that you're asking about?
Kids went
Kids? Oh, you mean the backpacks and?
Yeah, if you still, because last time I think it was under Captain Scott, he said that, or Susan said that you guys still had a few back in Hodgkins, but.
Yes, we currently, actually, we've ordered a total of 800 new kits, if you will, if that's what you're calling it. So, what's that? A helmet, gloves, goggles, some basic first aid material, that kind of thing. So yeah, we ordered 900 of those that are included with the backpack, and our intent is to get those out to people, starting with new trainees at the end of their training, class 7.
And the follow-up question is, what if, because for the last several years, many of the people that did graduate the cert course never got those kits. So what about those returning members or members who never got those kits?
Yeah.
Is there any way we can distribute them through the unit?
Our intent there is, once we have the kits on hand, is to distribute them at refresher trainings. Yes.
Thanks, Captain.
You're welcome.
Refresher training.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you. Please call us if you need it. Yes.
next speaker, or is that a wrap?
You can listen to me for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Really great, a lot of great questions. Let me throw a couple things out very quickly. It's getting late. I'll go through a half hour in about 5 minutes. The first real question, and that is what we all say, is why are we here? And what we're looking at, and the question was just asked, how do we get this information out? We're looking to have neighborhood councils become part of the process. That is, the city's emergency preparedness process. And that's going to take a little while, but I'm happy to say that everybody I've talked to, all the general managers that I've talked to, the people from the fire department, LAPD, etc., basically are supportive. They would like to see this. They realize that there's about 1,800 volunteers as a basis out there, and they're very, very excited about that. I had one fire chief say to me, if we could get one person from each neighborhood council, or one person from one half of each neighborhood council to be ACS, which is part of the ham radio group for the fire department, he says, that would be an incredible expansion. So what are we looking at?
How many are ACS here?
Huh?
How many are ACS here?
Yeah, how many here are ACS? Very good. ACS is amateur communications. Auxiliary, excuse me. I'm too used to thinking about Aries. Okay, it has to do with ham radio operators that communicate with and through the fire department. They work under the fire department. But we're going to get into that later. What we're going to look to, and I'm going to ask that you guys think about this, not now, but what's coming up after the first of the year. We're going to have to think about getting people to form some honest-to-God committees, okay? Because whatever we do, we're going to need some formal structures. And we're going to have to figure out what those structures are. We're going to have to put them together. So think about, I'm going to throw some things out by email about committees that we could help from. Because what we're going to have to want to know is, who's going to be part of this? What is it we're going to want to do? And literally, where is it we're going to want to do it? And all right, we just heard about CERT and getting trained and everything like that. Neighborhood councils can sponsor that. Yes, I'd love to see a weekend CERT come back. I like the idea of the refresher class. It's been a long time for me. I could really use a refresher class before moving up to more advanced. And all right, we're going to talk about, and maybe we'll have some people here who are already licensed to be part of that committee, ham radio. What are we looking at? And we've got some ideas, and it works with the 5-step program, breaking your neighborhoods down. You can break them down into 4 square block areas, number of residents instead. Maybe it's a single building because it's an apartment building. You get into your more dense areas. We'd like to have those small areas be coordinated by our neighborhood councils. We'd like communication to move from those small areas up the line to neighborhood councils. It's a hierarchical formation. And eventually get to those who can communicate with the city in these disaster situations. What do you need? What's going on? Who's there? Who needs something, etc.? What are your basic needs? And then allow for the communication to flow back down through the same channel, but from the city back down to each individual area of your neighborhood. That's the kind of thing that we'd be looking at. So we've got to come up with those kinds of ideas. And once again, for that, we're going to want people who can say, okay, we can help formalize this, because the reason it's got to be formalized is because everybody's got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to know how each of us is communicating, how each of us is working, and how we're getting things out there. We can distribute that throughout neighborhood councils. But I'm really glad to see the valley. Is it because we're all worried about what's going to happen on our hillsides when El Nino comes? Or just because we have more neighborhood councils out there? I'm not sure. All right. There has been a question about emergency bins. What can you do? Okay, I'm going to give you some general things with regard to that. And once again, we're going to want people to come up with ideas. Okay. The city says, no, a neighborhood council cannot put out an emergency bin. No, they cannot stock it, etc., etc. Why? It's called liability. Oh, okay. A bin, a Connex box. You know, one of those great big containers that come in on the ships, the things that you can buy used for, not too much money, they'll be painted and everything else. We've got one at our community center that Tarzana purchased, or, well, no, we didn't buy it. We did a grant and they bought it. We did another grant and they stocked it. And it's, you know, got the whirly goodies on top to pull the heat out, and it's got a honest-to-God side door, a regular side door with a lock so that people can walk in and out. It's filled with first responder material. And it just happens to be directly across the street from fire department number 93. And they know that they can come across the street, they can triage there, and our local hospital can come a few blocks to it. All right. Neighborhood councils, because of city liability, the city has said, no, you can't use your money to do that. What can you do? You can go through a nonprofit. So here's a thought, just an idea. We've got a nonprofit here. We've got maybe a citywide nonprofit. There was one that was formed years ago that's kind of moribund right now. Neighborhood councils that are interested in emergency bins could look to giving a neighborhood purposes grant to that. It could be set up. I hope to have somebody here, or I will have somebody here from Rec and Parks to talk to us. Maybe their facilities would be a place where they could be supported. The main thing is that it has to go through something other than the neighborhood council, but the neighborhood council can, through NPGs, spend funds on it. Just a minute. And who's in charge? The nonprofit would have to be in charge. The nonprofit would have a key. Can you have a volunteer in your neighborhood that has a backup key so that when the lines go down, when the streets go down, and you've got high voltage line across your main road, nobody can get in and out, that backup person can be asked to open a bin? Yeah, you can do that. Can neighborhood council people be board members on these nonprofits? Yeah, there's not a problem with that. You just can't vote money for it. You can't deal with it at your neighborhood councilman. So these are just ideas that we can talk about. Possible forming of a citywide nonprofit that would just do this, okay? So there's the kind of thing. Because someone obviously has to stock the bin, someone has to decide what goes in the bin, someone has to resupply it every X number of years. You got to do that, same as you do with your emergency kit. You know, you label your batteries, and about the time they're ready to run out, you go and get a whole batch of new batteries. You say, what do I do with all these batteries I've never used? By the way, your local LA Public Library will accept alkaline batteries, lithium-ion batteries, nickel metal hydride batteries. I don't think they'll take the gel batteries. I don't think they'll take the gel batteries, but there are places that will. So just consider that. So we may talk about what kind of restriction would you have on a neighborhood council that got involved with this? Would you have to have an emergency preparedness committee? Would you have to have some people that were CERT trained that might know how to use these materials if it's first responder material? So those are things that we've got to think about. Bill, you're dying to ask a question.
The question kind of begs itself. You've given us options for having bins and supplies because the city says no. How about the mayor directs the city attorney to draft an ordinance that allows them to have the bins? We should not just accept no because the city says no.
Okay.
And what is the liability for the city when no one can get anywhere? The fire department can't.
Bill.
You didn't give me mine.
Okay, and I'm not telling you what this is a lawyer, I'm just telling you what I've heard. And what I've heard is that when the city takes an action, okay, when they do something and there's a screw up, they become liable. If they take no action, they are not liable.
I understand. It's a typical attorney response. No.
And you can pass all the ordinances you want. Since the city is self-insured, the city does not want to accept that kind of liability. A nonprofit could buy its own insurance with money that was given to it and could then be covered for things that happen.
Lynn, I just wanted to ask a quick question relating to that very same thing. In the pamphlet that was handed out earlier, this one called 5 Steps to Neighborhood Preparedness, that Mona handed out,
There is a list in the back of this talking about purchasing a Connex bin and with supplies, and these are the exact same supplies that we have in our bins. The city is recommending that we do this, and yet we're not allowed to. This is maddening.
No, the city is recommending what you can do as a private citizen. The city is not recommending what you do as a neighborhood council.
It says neighborhood meeting facilitator guide.
Welcome to the city of
You said, you mentioned two things. You said the city doesn't want the liability. Essentially what you're doing is passing that liability issue on to the neighborhood councils. That liability, now let me finish please, that liability insurance is upwards of $1,200 a year. We've looked into it for our nonprofit. Where's that money gonna come from?
Well, as I said, neighborhood councils are allowed to make NPGs, neighborhood purposes grants, to nonprofits. And you can do that, and it can be for purchasing supplies, Connex, et cetera, and related items. Now, you're supposed to follow up to see whether or not that NPG was spent properly. That's under Dunn's organizational thing. You're actually supposed to find out when you give nonprofits some money, did they do what they said they were going to do with it? And if it's related, then the nonprofit has to do what it has to do to run itself, to maintain itself, et cetera. So there we go.
Okay, we have done, I have done that for my neighborhood, so it works. You need to have a nonprofit set up to separate the volunteers from the people who want to sue. A question is, are you kind of leaning towards setting up one umbrella nonprofit per city, so we don't all have to go through this, jump through the hoops, because it is a major effort to set up a corporation and get a 501c3.
Let me say that I know of a nonprofit that was set up years ago that currently is not active, and I know who's got the paperwork, and I'm trying to get a hold of him, and perhaps that might be a solution, a nonprofit organization that is, its purpose is to aid and promote neighborhood councils in the city of Los Angeles. That would be a valid purpose for a 501c3. It's an idea. I'm not saying yes or no, but I'm saying it's an idea.
It's a good idea.
And that would be, if you figure that 20 neighborhood councils throughout the city wanted to have these bins, and you came up with how much you would need to administer it, you could either have a volunteer board or maybe a paid, whoever, what it's going to cost, you could figure out how much it would be for each neighborhood council to set this kind of thing up. Like I say, Tarzana purchased the Connex box, purchased the material, didn't purchase, we gave our community center the money, they set it up, they put the box in, they stocked it, they're responsible for it, they have the key to it, and it's there, it's all first responder material. It has nothing to do with, the people from the neighborhood coming and get food. It's all first responder material, and they're responsible for it. So
Who has the insurance?
they do. It's all theirs. They have their regular insurance and everything else.
I guess it's the
Yeah, real quick comment. I would suggest that another committee that can be created is essentially a legal and political committee. We have a lawyer holding the other microphone.
I'm not speaking as a lawyer.
Probably lots of other lawyers. And you should think about what changes in the law or in city policy might be useful, because that's all we're talking about. Obviously, the mayor is in support of this process. I don't think there are any city council members who are not in support of this process. So let's cut through all this red tape and stop wasting our time trying to speculate about what the Supreme Court is going to think about this in this meeting.
Got one just before you.
Quick question regarding the status of DSW Act and neighborhood council members. I'm quite familiar with the Act, and this is specifically to you, Veronica, because you might be able to answer this question. Since neighborhood and Len, Are neighborhood council officials considered public officials under the city?
Yes.
Depends upon what they want to say and what you're doing.
All right. Under this,
Are you indemnified by the city as long as you are acting in the capacity of a board member? Yes, you are.
okay, then that leads to the DSW Act, and DSW Act is the Disaster Service Act, Workers Act, which for those that are not familiar with it, since the act covers public employees, I read somewhere, probably one of the older revisions of the act, that it covered public officials at one point. Does that extend to neighborhood council members for protection?
That's a legal question that would have to be answered by someone who's familiar with that law.
So, on the issue of nonprofit, and not to put either of the board members on the spot, but for the Valley Disaster Preparedness event, because that's been going on for 7 years, and decided rather than having to pay each of the vendors individually by each neighborhood councils, that a nonprofit was created, I guess about a year ago. So again, without putting either Bill or Lynn on the spot, but could the Southern California Preparedness Foundation serve in that role, or is that something you'd be interested in discussing and maybe getting back to us at our next meeting, since that is Southern California, we are certainly all Southern California.
I'll provide the same answer that Len has. We're looking into it.
Okay, we got a question. Okay, as you can see, this is not a yes or no.
Is the nonprofit the Los Angeles Emergency Management nonprofit?
No.
Because there is a nonprofit foundation for the emergency management in the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, well, I mean, who knows? Who knows? I mean,
Let's get them here at the next meeting.
We could. And I'm speaking much more freely than any of the city attorneys would. And that's because I'm not speaking as an attorney, and I'm not speaking officially for the city of Los Angeles or for the city attorney's office.
The website, emergency.lacity.org.
Okay, and, okay.
Yeah, they support the emergency, what was their official title again? Emergency Operations Foundation.
Okay, Emergency Operations Foundation,
Yeah,
okay.
they support a lot of the programs that the Emergency Management Department does and executes. For example, they're one of our large sponsors for our annual, they're the Emergency Operations Foundation. They're one of our leading sponsors for two annual emergency management programs that we do to train a lot of the city's responders, to keep them updated on, latest best practices, and I'm not sure what their other functions. I know they also help with during times of disaster, because they can accept, their foundation, they can accept donations, which gives the city department a little bit more flexibility versus, going through, the council system to accept money and actually to use it. So they're a resource. And they also work with, they also lead the business operation, BOC, Business Operations Center. They're the lead. So they coordinate a lot of the private sector and also the nonprofit sector in helping the city to respond for disasters. So they work with, the food sector, the transportation sector, the communication sector. If, for example, there's a large disaster, the foundation would work with, say, for example, AT&T and Starbucks to create free Wi-Fi, in all Starbucks or in various places throughout the city. The city needs to move in additional, cell towers. The foundation will work with AT&T to move them into some of the, areas that may have been impacted. The foundation would work with, for example, with some of the major distributors like grocery food chains or Costco in moving, product, for example, water to distressed areas. So they use them basically, for logistics, in case we need to leverage, logistical resources. So they do a lot of different things. But one of the things that I know that they do to support our specific programs is we do 2 large annual workshops for city family, for county. We talked about coordinating with county and state and national organizations. We do these large conferences to talk about how we're responding, how we work together, best practices and things of that sort. I hope that doesn't confuse you further, but
Okay,
that's what we do.
that's going to be something that I'm going to have to talk to Jim Featherstone and Veronica and Mona about.
Mona, yeah. And Brent, I forget Brent's last name, I believe he's listed on there, Brent, I forget his last name, but he is the chair of that committee, so you can certainly invite him to come and talk specifically about what they do.
Okay, so you see, that's why we have these meetings, because all these good minds here. Okay, like I said, let's talk about, think about committees. We'll try and come up with some ideas, get them out to you, see who might want to volunteer. Here's the thing we're really looking at, what it comes down to is, neighborhood councils have something that the city doesn't have. We've got a lot of people out there. And we've got a way to communicate with our stakeholders that they don't have. I mean, you can ask people, notify LA. One of the people here, I can't remember, what's Kate Hutton's title?
She's a public information officer.
Okay. She was grilled by the city council as to just how was it she expected to get 4 million people notified about Notify LA. And my answer is, well, I know Tarzana's got 3,000 people on their email list. I don't know what you guys have got, but we are the resource. And we need to become part of the solution. And that's what this is all about. I'm going to be querying each of the neighborhood council presidents, and maybe I'll send it out to the entire board, because sometimes the presidents don't respond. Much like the budget advocates, I'd like to see 2 people from each neighborhood council as volunteers, and then those 2 people will get together as within the areas of each of the commissioners' responsibility. That's the 7 area planning commission areas, and they will choose 2 of their number, which means 14 people. And I want to see those 14 people allowed to, at the very least, sit at the table of the Emergency Management Committee that meets once a month. And perhaps, if they're interested and everybody says yes, sit on some of, or sit in on some of the subcommittees that meet. And these are the people that plan for and look at emergency preparedness in the city of Los Angeles. And then, like the budget advocates, they can come back and report to neighborhood councils so that we all know what's happening around the city and we can be part of it. That's what I mean when I say we will become part of the process. And people have said, yeah, why not? Because they know that we're a great asset. So that's where we are right now. We've got a couple more questions and then we're done. We have, got any more? Okay. Oh, speak up so it gets to the recorder.
So those 2 reps from each neighborhood council would be on the city council's emergency preparedness?
No, there is an emergency management board. Is it 12 or 15 general managers, Veronica? 15 general managers. They meet every other month. Who knew? Okay? And below them is an emergency management committee. And that's made up of people from various departments. And then they have subcommittees. Okay? Once every 2 months, the Emergency Management Committee reports to the Emergency Management Board to let them know what's going on. And that's how the system is working through the city. And that's what we want to be part of. And nobody has said no so far. Everybody has said, hey, that's not a bad idea. Because they keep looking at 1,800 volunteers out there. Okay? And that's the big thing. That's what we have to offer the city. We have 1,800 people. We have a means of communication. Because I'm going to tell you something, and Veronica can cover hers if she wants to, but when Lucy Jones earthquake hits, okay? How many of you have battery backup for your modems that connect to your internet? How many have battery backup for the routers that attach to those modems, okay? Okay, not many, all right? That means you're going to lose internet at your house. I don't care if it happens to stay up citywide, you're going to lose it at your house, okay? That's number one. If what Lucy Jones says is correct, and my friend Kate Hutton, who just retired from Caltech says is right, San Andreas goes, that great big fiber optic cable that crosses the San Andreas along with oil, gas, and water, that disappears. That's gone. If we're lucky, and we've got our broadband system in Los Angeles by that time, and they've got backup servers, we can at least have an intranet within Los Angeles, okay? But when that goes away, and the power goes away, cell towers have a 4-hour backup capacity with their batteries. After 4 hours, they die. Yeah, maybe. It depends on when they last. Do you remember something that happened in Arizona about 2 years ago? Somebody accidentally flipped the wrong switch. 4 hours later, all the cell phones in the south part of California were gone. Okay? They haven't put in their generators yet to keep them. Okay? So, the neighborhood, it may be that we go back to what used to be, okay? We have runners in your neighborhood. You never know. If we're organized, people can communicate. People can communicate. We'll know who's in trouble. We'll know what's going on. We'll be able to get to the city. We'll be able to get to each other. It's not 72 hours anymore, okay? I would say double that time before you start to get help. Because the fire department, the police department, the emergency responders in the city of Los Angeles are going to be going to the centers of population. They're going to be going to where a lot of people are. If you happen to be in a single family residential area, that's not where they're going to be, okay? It's as simple as that. So this is what we're looking to do. This is what this is all about, is to get the neighborhood councils part of this emergency preparedness for the city of Los Angeles so that it's a sustainable city. And it works until the emergency responders can start getting there with what they need. And that's where we are with this, okay? I'm getting get off my soapbox. Yeah.
Glenn, quick question. Is there any, by any chance, like an email where we can put down our email so it can be part of this larger email list that we're talking
There's a sign-in sheet.
For this Lions group?
What are we talking about? By the way, where's the sign-up sheet?
The sign-in sheet's making its way that way.
Yeah.
We never got it.
Okay, well, did you guys all get my emails?
No.
Okay, if you didn't, and you printed nicely.
Yes. We'll add you if you print
If
nicely.
you printed your, there's some email addresses, that I can go searching neighborhood councils because you're a board member and find out that the one is at the end of the name instead of the beginning of the name, or it's not a 1, it's an L or something like that. Print very legibly. And I the department through Tom and everybody gets me as best they can, and I watch for the bounce backs. And when I get the bounce backs, I go searching to see if I can correct the actual email. But if you think there's something coming up and you haven't gotten notice of it, okay, it's very simple. It's Leonard.Schaefer, and Schaefer is spelled S-H-A-F-F-E-R. No C, no E. And no, I don't know how a Polak, my grandfather, got a name that comes from German but with anglicized, and he says he doesn't know either. So I don't know how that happened, okay?
Ellis Island.
Huh? No, he didn't come to Ellis Island. He went directly from where he was on the Volga to Seattle because he was sponsored and there were people waiting for him in Seattle. So, we don't know where it came from.
Leonard Schaefer at
lacity.org. And if you just send it to me at lacity.org, my name, Leonard.Schaefer, lacity.org, I will get it. I will put you, just say, put me on your email list. I will put you on the email list. And that's only if you don't get it. If you're getting it, you're already on the email list, okay? You're already there. I've got 2 email lists. I've got one for all board members in the city of Los Angeles, or at least as close as we can get. And I've got one for everybody who's come here, who's RSVP'd, who signed on the sheet and everything. So we've got that. So we've taken enough of your Saturday. Thank you for coming, everybody. The next meeting, okay, next meeting. Well, I had promised somebody that we wouldn't meet on the 3rd. Okay, but as it turns out, the commission is going to do something different this year with our retreat. Rather than having our retreat in the middle of the week at 10 o'clock in the morning at some facility that nobody can get to, we said we'd have our retreat on a Saturday at a public place, that the people who want to come to the commission's retreat and see what we're doing and make public comment and everything else and tell us where we're messing up or where we're doing good or what you'd like to see us to do. And we picked the 30th day of January, which was the 4th Saturday.
That's 5th Saturday.
5th Saturday. Is that the 5th Saturday?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Which location?
Hang on.
We're sort of talking around.
Don't go away. Don't go away.
I'm going to make a point. Take one.
Wait a minute. Is that the...
The 30th is the 5th Saturday.
Oh, that's perfect. If the 30th is the 5th Saturday, we will look at the 23rd. Yeah, we will get started on the 4th Saturday. And what I'd like to do is the 4th Saturday of each month. And I'd also like to move it around. I may ask, because of what I want to do with this next meeting, I may ask Jim Featherstone if he would be good enough to let us come here again, because I'm going to try and get all those various acronyms from ham radio here to talk about what they do and how they do and everything else. And then we'll talk about how that can integrate into this whole plan. And then I'd like to move around the city, maybe get the Browdy one Saturday, and perhaps get down to the harbor on another Saturday, and get to the south side, and things like that. I'd like to move around to make it convenient for everybody. Every place we go, I will look for parking and access by public transportation. Those are the two things I insist on. So, there we go.
May I suggest that you send out to every board member an announcement that such an alliance exists?
Right.
And ask them to please respond if they want to be on this more discreet email, so that they're not getting barraged, but that they learn about it.
Okay, my very first email that announced this went out to every board member based on the accuracy of the department's list. I downloaded that myself. There's a process for doing that. I organized it myself and sent it out, so everybody got it, okay? And those, go ahead.
I, as president, will make sure that every Selmar Neighborhood Council member knows about this and will email you if they want to be on your...
Okay, that's great, that's great. Be very careful, because you notice this room, now we can take all of these tables out, and we can put about 75 people in here, which we had on our first meeting. Once we reach that on our RSVP list, we got to turn people away at this facility. But it looks like we're getting a core group. What do we have today, about 50? Okay, we had about 50 people here today. 45 RSVP and some didn't. So I'm going to think like any other group, we're going to end up with a core group of people. And you're the ones that are going to take it out to your areas, out to your neighborhoods. I'm going to ask the commissioners to communicate with all of their neighborhood councils and push this to the center. So I'm glad January has 5. We chose the last 30th. By the way, put that on your calendars. I think
30th or 23rd?
No, the 30th for the commission, the 23rd for this. I think we may have it. We were talking about the Ridley Thomas Constituent Center. We might have it there. It's a good room for that, and we can use it on a Saturday. We've got a problem with using Hollywood, and yes, it's getting time, and I know that. So thank you all. Everybody have a good holiday. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate and anything else, and a very good New Year. Safety, okay? Safe and sane, guys.